You pull the weeds on Saturday. By the following Saturday, they are back, like you never touched them at all. You spray them. 2 weeks later, a fresh batch pushes up from seeds that have been sitting in your soil for years, patiently waiting for their turn. You mulch. The mulch breaks down, the weeds find the gap, and you are buying more mulch again next spring. It feels like a war you cannot actually win, and here is why. Every time you clear the ground, you have done the one thing weeds are specifically designed to exploit. You have left it bare. Here is what professional landscape crews stopped doing years ago. They stopped fighting weeds and started denying them the only thing they actually need to exist: bare, open soil. No mulch bag, no spray tank, just living plants packed in so tightly that a weed seed germinates, looks around, and finds nowhere to put down a root. 7 ground covers today that do exactly that. Plant them once and they take over the job of weeding for the rest of your life. 2 things to hold on to right now. Number 4 is the one almost nobody buys on purpose, and it might be the single most functional plant on this entire list. And number 7 is going to make you genuinely angry at the lawn care industry. Because what I am about to tell you about that plant was deliberately hidden from American gardeners for 70 years. I am not exaggerating. Stay with me. This channel exists to give you exactly this kind of information. The real reasons your yard keeps losing to weeds, and the specific plants that end that fight permanently. If you are not subscribed yet, do it now. Every week this channel publishes the practical plant information most gardening sources never get around to telling you. Subscribe so it finds you directly. Before we start, tell me in the comments what your worst weed spot looks like right now. Sunny and bare, shady and bare, a slope, a strip along a fence, a low spot that stays wet. Drop it in the comments with your zone, because I am going to be reading those responses and I want to match you to the right plant as we go through this list. Your situation is specific. The answer should be 2. Let's go. Plant number 1, sweet woodruff, Galium odoratum. Start with the spot every gardener secretly dreads: deep shade under a mature tree. The narrow strip along the north side of a fence where the sun genuinely never reaches. Most ground covers will not even attempt that environment. Sweet woodruff was built for it. It grows low, under a foot, and it spreads through underground rhizomes. Slowly, deliberately. Not the kind of plant that takes over your yard in one season. The kind that shows up reliably where you put it, builds quietly for 2 seasons, and then forms a continuous mat of whorled star-shaped leaves so dense that the soil beneath it disappears entirely from view. In spring it opens into a haze of small white flowers that carry a genuinely pleasant fragrance, and that fragrance intensifies dramatically once the foliage is cut and dried, thanks to a natural compound called coumarin that concentrates as the leaves lose moisture. This is the same compound responsible for the scent of fresh-cut hay, and it is the reason sweet woodruff has a centuries-old history as a stuffing herb and as the flavoring agent in traditional German May wine, where sprigs are steeped in white wine to produce a flavor nothing else replicates. As a weed barrier, the mechanism is straightforward. The overlapping foliage forms a continuous shade canopy at ground level. Weed seeds requiring light to germinate, which describes the overwhelming majority of common lawn and garden weeds, simply never receive the trigger they need. The seed sits under the leaf canopy indefinitely, viable but dormant, waiting for light that never arrives. Hardy zones 4 through 8, acidic soil with reliable organic content, essentially the same profile you would find under a hardwood forest floor. Near a lawn edge, install a physical root barrier at planting time, because the rhizomes will cross an unedged boundary within a few seasons. In a large, fully shaded area, with no adjacent lawn to protect, let it run freely, and it will finish the job faster than almost anything else you could plant there. Plant number 2, creeping jenny, Lysomachia nummularia, variety defined, aurea. If sweet woodruff is patient, this plant is in a hurry, and that urgency is exactly why it earns a spot on this list. The cultivar aurea, golden creeping jenny, is the one to find. The foliage glows chartreuse to gold in direct sun in a way that makes people stop and ask what it is. The effect intensifies the more light it receives and fades toward green in deeper shade. The growth mechanism is what makes this plant a serious weed competitor rather than just a pretty trailing accent. Every node along a stem that touches soil sends down its own roots. which means a single plant is not spreading outward from one point, it is establishing dozens of independent anchor points simultaneously across the bed. A planting that looks modest in May can be a continuous 2-inch tall mat covering several square feet by August. No gaps, no bare soil, nothing for a weed seed to find. It performs across full sun to partial shade and genuinely prefers moist soil, which makes it an excellent solution for the low spot in a yard where water collects after rain, an area where most ornamentals would struggle with root rot. Hardy zones 3 through 9. One regional note. The straight green species has been flagged in several states near natural wetlands because of how readily it establishes outside cultivation. If your project is near a pond, stream, or wetland edge, check with your local extension office before planting the straight species. The golden cultivar aurea is generally considered lower risk. In an ordinary contained garden bed with no adjacent waterway, it remains one of the fastest, most complete weed barriers on this list. Plant number 3. Ajuga, bugleweed. Varieties to find: black scallop, chocolate chip, or burgundy glow. This is the plant that makes people stop and ask what it is, which is not something you typically hear about a functional weed suppressor. Ajuga reptans produces foliage in colors that read more like a curated paint palette than a typical ground cover. Deep burgundy, near black, variegated combinations of pink, cream, and green depending on the cultivar. Every spring, spikes of blue-purple flowers rise several inches above the foliage mat, and those spikes are a genuine early-season draw for bumblebees specifically, whose longer tongues and body size are well matched to the tubular flower shape in a way that smaller bee species cannot exploit as efficiently. The plant spreads through stolons, horizontal runners that extend outward from the parent plant and root at intervals, functionally identical in strategy to a strawberry plant. Over 1 to 2 growing seasons, those runners knit adjacent plants into a single unbroken mat. Leaves overlapping so completely that almost no direct light reaches the soil surface beneath. Weed seeds attempting to germinate in that environment fail for lack of light. Weed seedlings that somehow do sprout underneath frequently cannot physically push their way up through the dense foliage layer above them. Ajuga tolerates the full range from full sun to full shade, an unusual degree of flexibility. It performs best in partial shade in hot climates where intense afternoon sun can scorch darker foliage varieties. Hardy zones 3 through 9 and notably tolerates heavy clay soil that stops many other ground covers entirely. Black scallop produces the deepest, glossiest near-black foliage on the market. Chocolate chip is a genuinely dwarf selection with narrow bronze-tinted leaves suited to tight spaces. Burgundy glow carries the widest color range in one leaf: pink, cream, and green in an irregular variegated pattern. Space new plants 6 to 12 inches apart at planting rather than crowding them. Let the natural spread close the gaps over the following season. Crowded plants restrict airflow and invite the one real vulnerability: crown rot in humid, poorly drained soil. I want to stop here for a second. Of the first 3 plants on this list, which one are you looking at right now thinking that is exactly what I need for that spot? Not the one that is prettiest, the one that solves the actual problem you have been staring at for 2 years. Drop it in the comments with what your spot looks like. Sun, shade, wet, dry, slope, strip, because I read every single one of those comments and I will tell you whether that match is right or whether one of the next 4 plants is actually the better answer for your situation. Plant number 4, creeping thyme, Thymus serpulum. Varieties to find: pink chintz, elfin, or red creeping thyme. Here is the one I told you to wait for. Everyone knows thyme as a kitchen herb, upright, woody, harvested for cooking. Creeping thyme is a structurally different plant entirely, a low mat-forming relative that was never intended for the spice rack, and it does something on the ground that almost nothing else on this list can do. At 1 to 3 inches tall, it is the shortest plant here, and that low profile is deceptive. The foliage density is extraordinary. Tiny aromatic leaves packed so tightly along the stems that the resulting mat functions less like a plant and more like a living, breathing pavement. Because the stems are genuinely woody rather than soft and herbaceous, the structure holds up under conditions that would flatten most ground covers permanently. Foot traffic being the most significant of those conditions. This is one of the only plants on this list rated for regular foot traffic. Planted between stepping stones, along a garden path, or as a full lawn substitute in a low traffic area, It tolerates being walked on repeatedly and springs back rather than staying crushed. Step on it and the essential oils in the crushed foliage release instantly into the air. An aromatic byproduct that turns an ordinary walk through the garden into something closer to an experience. Drought tolerance here is exceptional. Arguably, the best on this list. Once established, creeping thyme actively prefers lean, sandy, or rocky soil over anything rich or heavily amended. It wants full sun and sharp drainage above everything else. Overly fertile, consistently moist conditions are the fastest way to weaken it. Hardy zones 4 through 9. It produces a dense flush of small pink, purple, or white flowers in late spring, and during that bloom window it becomes a significant nectar source. Thyme honey is a recognized specialty product in regions where it is grown at scale for exactly this reason. Pink chintz produces soft pink blooms over gray-green foliage. Elfin is the most compact variety available, ideal for the tightest spaces between pavers. Red creeping thyme produces a saturated magenta-pink bloom that reads almost fluorescent in full sun. If you are choosing one plant from this entire list to start with, this is the one. It solves the driest, hottest, most difficult spot in most American yards, tolerates foot traffic no other ground cover on this list can handle, and functions as a weed barrier, a pollinator resource, and a fragrance source simultaneously. This is also the halfway point of this list. And if what you have heard so far is genuinely changing how you think about the weed problem in your yard, this channel does exactly this every single week. Real plants, real variety names, real solutions for the specific conditions most gardening advice glosses over. If you are not subscribed yet, hit that button right now. The next video is already built, and it is just as specific as this one. Subscribe so it finds you the moment it goes live. Plant number 5, sedum, stonecrop. Varieties to find: dragon's blood or Angelina. For the conditions that defeat almost everything else, hot, rocky, thin soil with no irrigation, this is where the list becomes specifically relevant to you. Low-growing spreading sedums are succulents. The fleshy leaf tissue stores water directly, giving the plant a functional independence from regular rainfall that almost no other ground cover on this list can match. Height typically runs 2 to 6 inches. The foliage shifts color with the season, many varieties running green through summer and shifting to deep red, bronze, or copper as temperatures cool in fall, providing color in the garden during months when most other ground covers have gone flat and uninteresting. The weed suppression mechanism is the same dense coverage strategy as every other plant on this list. It just takes over the ground so completely that there is nowhere left for a weed to land. But sedum carries a distinct additional advantage specific to difficult sites. Most weeds are adapted to reasonably fertile conditions and genuinely struggle to compete on thin, rocky, nutrient-poor soil. Sedum performs better, not worse, in exactly those conditions, which means on a hot south-facing slope or a strip of gravelly neglected soil, you are pairing your weed barrier's best growing conditions directly against your weed's worst. That is not just suppression. That is a mismatch, so one-sided the weeds never had a chance. Hardy zones 3 through 9, full sun and excellent drainage above all else. Standing water or heavy waterlogged soil is the one condition that will reliably kill it. Dragon's blood produces green summer foliage that shifts to deep crimson in cold weather, alongside rich red summer flowers. Angelina produces bright gold needle-like foliage that holds its color through most of the growing season and is frequently used in commercial green roof installations, specifically because of its combined drought tolerance and shallow root profile. Plant number 6, Vinca minor, periwinkle. Varieties to find: Bowles variety or Alba. Every plant so far has a season where it slows down. This one does not. And that distinction makes it functionally different from everything else on this list. Vinca minor is a trailing evergreen with glossy dark green foliage that holds its color through winter across most of the temperate United States. A rare quality among low ground covers. Growth runs 6 to 12 inches, spreading through long runners that root wherever they make contact with soil, gradually building a dense, glossy, continuous mat. Small 5-petaled flowers open in early spring in a distinctive soft violet blue, the exact color the word periwinkle was coined to describe. Because that bloom arrives so early, before most other nectar sources have opened, it functions as a genuinely important early food source for pollinators just emerging from winter dormancy. The specific advantage here is year-round coverage. Deciduous ground covers on this list die back to some degree in winter, briefly reopening bare soil to weed seeds during the coldest months. Vinca minor never does that. The evergreen canopy holds through every month of the calendar. Weed suppression does not pause for a season, it simply continues. Bowles variety produces the largest individual flowers of any Vinca selection and is considered the most reliably vigorous. Alba produces clean white flowers that read beautifully against the dark foliage, a combination that works particularly well in shaded areas where white flowers carry visual weight that colored flowers lose in low light. Hardy zones 4 through 9. Tolerates full sun through full shade. An excellent choice for slope and bank stabilization. The trailing rooting stems physically anchor loose soil in place in a way few other ground covers achieve as effectively. One caution that matters. Near wooded property lines, physical edging at planting is non-negotiable. Left unedged near woodland, Vinca crosses that boundary and does not stop on its own. Here is a question I genuinely want you to answer. Of the 6 plants so far, which one solves a problem in your yard that you had completely given up on? The spot you stopped even trying with? The strip you have been mowing around for 3 years? The slope you threw bark dust at twice? Tell me what that spot is, and tell me your zone. Because the answer you write might be the exact thing that saves someone else from giving up on that same spot in their own yard. Comment sections on this channel are where real gardeners solve real problems together. Be part of that. Plant number 7, white clover. Trifolium repens, variety to find, microclover for lawn blending. This last one is going to contradict almost everything you were taught about what belongs in a proper lawn. And I want you to actually sit with that for a second before I explain why. Because what happened to this plant is one of the most deliberate acts of misdirection in the history of American gardening. For most of the 20th century, clover was a standard deliberate component of American lawn seed mixtures, included specifically because of what it does to soil. Then broadleaf herbicides became commercially available in the 1950s, chemicals that could not distinguish between clover and an actual broadleaf weed. And rather than formulate around that limitation, the industry simply redefined clover itself as an undesirable weed to be eliminated. That redefinition was a marketing decision, not a horticultural one, not an ecological one. A marketing decision made by the companies selling the herbicide that killed it. And American gardeners have been paying for that decision in fertilizer bills, dead patches, and summer drought damage ever since. Trifolium repens is a legume. Legumes host a symbiotic relationship with nitrogen-fixing bacteria living in small nodules on their root systems. Those bacteria pull inert nitrogen gas directly from the air and convert it into a form the plant and the soil around it can use. In practical terms, a stand of clover is fertilizing your soil every single day it grows, for free, without you doing anything. None of the previous 6 plants on this list do that. Clover is the only one actively improving the soil while it suppresses weeds, not merely occupying space, but building something better beneath it. As a ground cover, it stays low, generally 4 to 8 inches, and spreads aggressively through both runners and self-seeding, forming a dense low canopy that shades out competing seedlings with real efficiency. The small white flower heads are a critical forage source for honeybees and native bumblebees, arguably the single most valuable pollinator plant on this entire list by sheer volume of visits per square foot during bloom. Hardy zones 3 through 10. Tolerates poor compacted soil that stops most ornamentals outright. Requires no fertilization ever, for the obvious reason. For gardeners wanting the ecological benefit without the taller, more informal look of standard white clover, microclover cultivars produce smaller leaves, a lower growth habit, and reduced flowering designed to blend seamlessly into an existing lawn rather than replace it outright. The lawn care industry spent 70 years convincing you this plant was a weed. It was never a weed. It was the solution they could not profit from. Here is the whole thing pulled together. Sweet woodruff owns deep shade. Creeping Jenny owns damp, low-lying ground and moves the fastest of anything on this list. Ajuga owns the spot where you want visual drama alongside function. Creeping Thyme owns hot, dry, foot traffic areas and is the single best starting plant if you are only trying one. Sedum owns rocky, neglected south-facing conditions nothing else survives. Vinca minor owns year-round coverage and slopes. Clover owns poor soil and active soil improvement. A single large bed rarely needs just one of these. Thyme along a sunny gravel edge, ajuga through the partially shaded middle ground, sweet woodruff tucked under the tree canopy at the back. 3 plants, 3 microclimates, 1 continuous weed-proof system with no seams for anything uninvited to exploit. 3 things before you go plant any of this. Clear the existing weeds completely before installing, root systems included, not just the visible top growth. For a heavily weed-infested area, lay flattened cardboard directly over the cleared soil, water it thoroughly, and plant through cut holes. The cardboard blocks light immediately while your new plants establish and breaks down naturally into the soil over the following months. Water consistently through the first full season regardless of which plant you choose. Every plant on this list becomes genuinely drought-tolerant once established, but establishment itself requires real consistent moisture, typically 2 to 3 deep waterings per week through that first year. Give it real time. Year 1 looks unimpressive almost universally. Thin coverage, visible soil, patience required. Year 2 closes the gaps dramatically. By year 3, most of these systems are essentially self-sustaining, and the weeding that used to consume your Saturday morning becomes something you do a handful of times per season, if that. Here is what I want you to picture. A Saturday morning 2 summers from now, you walk outside with your coffee and you look at the bed that has been losing to weeds for years, and there is nothing to do. The ground is covered. The plants are doing the work. The weeds that used to come back every single week have nowhere left to go. That morning is not far away. These 7 plants are the whole distance between where your yard is right now and there. Here is what I want from you before you close this video. 2 things. First, tell me which of these 7 plants you are putting in the ground this season. Not thinking about, putting in. And second, tell me which one surprised you most. The plant you never considered as a weed solution before today. Drop both answers in the comments with your zone and your worst weed spot description. Because a gardener dealing with your exact conditions is reading this comment section right now, and your specific real-world answer is worth more to them than anything I said in this entire video. Make it count. If this video changed how you think about the weed problem in your yard, that is exactly what this channel produces every single week. Specific, honest, no filler. Subscribe so the next one finds you directly. One more thing before you go. Next week on this channel, the 7 biggest mistakes gardeners make when installing ground covers, and number 3 is the one that causes more first-year failures than drought, shade, and wrong variety combined. Most gardeners make it without realizing it is a mistake at all. That video goes live this week. If you are not subscribed, it will not find you. Hit that button now so it lands directly in your feed the moment it publishes. Now go. The bare soil in your yard has been waiting long enough. I will see you next week.